Hi, everyone. Katie Anderson here, and I am thrilled to welcome my friend, Paul Epstein, here on my author interview series to talk about his newly released best-selling book, The Power of Playing Offense. So thank you for joining me here today, Paul.
Of course. Thank you, Katie, and fired up for the conversation. Hello to you all.
Yeah, great. And Paul and I actually met in person out in the San Francisco Bay Area in 2018, actually, and we stayed connected. And I've been part of Paul's workshops that he's led for consortia that I facilitate here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I've been really inspired by Paul's clarity of his why message and the inspiration that he brings forward to teams and individuals. So I'm really thrilled that he's put that into a book for all of us. And I'm eager to dive into our short author interview here. So we're going to start off with question number one, which is, as an author myself who published during the pandemic, which is not necessarily the easiest
Perfect timing, right, Katie? That's exactly how we all wanted to script it.
Yes, we all planned so many things in 2020 that didn't necessarily come out to be. So writing a book in the best of times is a massive undertaking, even more so in challenging times. And I'm really interested in hearing from you what inspired you to write this book and bring it forward now.
Yeah, it's a great question. And full transparency, if you had asked me a month before the pandemic, so let's go back in a time portal here to February of 2020. And if you would have asked me, am I writing a book in 2020? My answer would have been no. It was on the mid to long-term list, and I knew it would happen, but getting on a plane every other day would have just stretched it to the point where knowing how I get inspired, knowing how I get in a zone. Well, don't get me wrong. And of course, everybody listening in, my heart goes out to anybody that was impacted by the pandemic in a negative fashion. That said, there are 1,000,000% silver linings. There are positives. And if we chose to pivot, reinvent, take that intentional one step back to take 10 forward and try to play the long game, if we could afford to do so, in my case, it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Because Katie, I literally got to go in what I call a writing cocoon for 90 days. And I pumped out a 60,000 word manuscript. And so what inspired me to write it is I wrote the playbook that I never had, because the premise of the book is before you lead others, you must first lead yourself. And that was what I was missing. When I was head of sales for the San Francisco 49ers at the culmination of this 15-year leadership journey, I got a lot of what they call management training. I was taught how to do the skill and the function and how to attain the result, but never did I get a playbook on how to lead others. Definitely didn't get the playbook on how to lead myself. And that's what was the original inspiration. So it came from a little bit of pain. I created this avatar named Paul, head of sales for the Niners. And that's what I wrote, because that's what made it so personal. And basically, I just didn't want people to fall into the same pitfalls that I did.
That's great. And, one of the reasons why I think you and I connect so much is on that sense of we have to start with ourselves before we can lead others.
Yes.
And that's how when we find here, then we can really go out further. So I have a new puppy, and she's deciding to play with her water bowl right under my window.
She's right joining the call. Maybe she's going to write a book one day, Katie. You never know.
Yes, she will. So I was really inspired, and it continued to be, by the clarity of your why message. And I have two questions for the second, or two parts of question two. First is, how do you describe your why? And then what is one step that you recommend that someone else can take to start clarifying their own why?
Yeah, so my official why statement is to inspire purpose in others so they can play offense in life. And what playing offense means to me is somebody that lives with meaning, somebody that lives with purpose, somebody that has intent in every single one of their actions. They step into each day with clarity and conviction because they are being true to themselves, true to their purpose. That's kind of it. Now, if I could zoom out, because I don't want this to sound like a commercial, really what my purpose is to help others find their purpose. My mission is to help others find their mission. My cause is to help others find their cause. And so for me, it's more important that I inspire. The Latin definition of inspire is to breathe life into. So I ask myself every day, am I breathing purpose into people in the world? Am I breathing mission and impact and all of these wonderful things? And that's really it. Now, the North Star is the purpose, but I think the part that fundamentally changed my life even more than purpose and finding my why, it was understanding my core values. And that's what I would try to share out with everybody listening in here. Your values are who you are, those core beliefs that you have. If I was to ask the 5 people that are closest to you to describe you in a word, what's the most common word that would come up? That is a core value of yours. So now that you identify that, are you making daily decisions through the lens of that value? Yeah. Are you showing up in service of that value? Are your behaviors and actions consistent and aligned to that value? And that's kind of the personal audit that I call my identity model. And all of this is in the book because really I try to provide these portable bite-sized exercises because finding your purpose sounds so daunting and overwhelming. But can you ask 5 people you're closest to describe you in a word? And can you start to make decisions and form actions around that one word? Of course you can, if you choose to step into what I call a purpose-driven life. And so that's what I would recommend for everybody listening in.
I love that. It's a great exercise. You know, it's so interesting. The core of what we both talk about, we use slightly different words, but it's the same meaning. And that's what I call living and leading with intention. Like what's important inside of you, your values, your purpose, and then how do you align your actions with that? Like who do you want to be and how do you show up to be that person? And once you can do that, like that's the inspiration we can instill in others because we're living a purposeful life. So I love that you're providing that framework to help others as well to get into that. You know, this is a great segue into my next question about your framework of the 5 pillars of playing offense that go under 3 categories of leading self, leading others, and leading the future. And that really resonates with me. And so, you know, my question here is about what have you observed with all the leaders that you've worked with over your career is the place that most people get stuck in sort of moving up that progression?
Yeah, so I think that where most people get stuck, and I'm not going to blame the individual, I'm actually going to say I think it's more of the way that us as a society, and especially because I know you have an international and global audience, but let me zoom in on America for a second. I think that we're misdefining what leadership is, because the way that we define leadership, we always assume that you need a rank, a role, title, or authority. And the audit to that, because in my opinion, that's the incorrect version of leadership, because if that's the case, then the world is an org chart. We all live in a pyramid, the top 10%, because it's a 10-to-1 ratio of formal positional leader to individual contributor. That's what the stats show. So you mean to tell me that 90% of the world is not a leader and 10% are? A, it's not very inspiring. B, it's not the world that I believe in. And C, it's not the world that I'm trying to create, especially at work. So here's my question for everybody listening in. Think of the greatest leader that you've ever had in any walk of life. It can be business or it can be a parent, a coach, a teacher. Think of that leader now. And as that person is in your mind, why did you just think of them? How did they show up every day? How did they act, behave, make decisions? If you were to say they led by example, what were those behaviors? And now if I was to ask you, can you act and behave and make decisions in similar ways? Do you have that opportunity to? Because at the end of the day, we don't follow bosses or managers or supervisors. Those are negative term words. But who's the leader that you would follow to no end? They never asked you to follow them, and you would still go to the end of the earth and back because of who they are. They drew you in. And so if that is what we think of as a leader, it's all behavioral. So my definition of a leader is it's a trainable set of behaviors. And as you thought of that one leader that has impacted you the most, which I asked you a minute or two ago, show up every day with those same behaviors, because now you're leading yourself. So before, while the world is like, oh, you need to lead others, you need to lead a team, you need to lead a culture. All right, that's step 2, 3, and 4. But step 2, 3, and 4 aren't authentic or effective if you miss step 1, which is leading yourself.
Yeah, Totally. I'm so aligned with you. I love it. And I love your energy at how you talk about it too, Paul. You have a ton of great resources, not just in your book, but also on your website to help people explore all these topics and start working on themselves. What is one of your top recommendations for people to sort of start playing offense on Monday morning, which is actually the name of one of your handouts I saw on your website?
Yeah, so I mentioned one, which was the values exercise. I really do think that if you can, and this is a simple exercise, again, go to the top 5 relationships in your life, the people that know you the best, and ask for them to describe you in a word, and then allow that one word being one of your core values to drive the decisions that you make for the next 7 days. What's one different action that you can take in the next 7 days based on that value? So that one we already covered. Now, once you do that, take a step back and ask yourself, what are the top 3 goals that you have in your life? It can be personal, it can be professional. And then ask yourself, are my goals connected to my core value? Because if they are, now you can be true to your purpose and you'll be more inspired to hit the goal because it serves something bigger than yourself versus, like here's a good example. A lot of us have health goals. If a goal is to lose 10 pounds and it's purely for cosmetic reasons, it's a beauty thing. I promise you that the first time you don't want to get on the treadmill, you're not going to get on the treadmill because it's not deeper. Yeah. But what if there was a health scare in your past? What if you have a young child? And what if your inspiration is, I want to walk my daughter down the aisle? Like if that is this bigger purpose and maybe your value is belief, then you're going to stay on the treadmill, especially on the days you want to get off, because it's tied to a deeper purpose. So that's kind of one thing is I would say align your goals to your purpose and your core value. And that would be a great way to look at life starting Monday morning.
Yeah, great. I'm already so inspired by, by talking with you. We're going to switch a little bit now into you more. I have a question about what has been one of your own personally biggest growth opportunities as a leader or a coach?
My biggest growth opportunity was having the courage and the vulnerability to admit that I sold out at one point because I prioritized corporate goals over people. And it was because just like many folks around us, we become obsessed with success and we climb this ladder. And the title, the money, the responsibilities, the world rewards you for hitting goals and metrics and KPIs. But when I put those things ahead of people, I was called out by one of the presidents that I used to report to. And he shared this quote, which most have heard from Roosevelt, that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And he said, that's where you can improve. Basically, he said that I wasn't getting an A+ in the test of care. And what sucks is my heart cared, but my actions didn't display it. And shame on me, but I'm open to sharing this with everybody listening in because Paul can be an amazing leader on his best day. And on his worst day, I wouldn't follow Paul because he's not being a leader, he's being a manager. He's being a manager of results, not a leader of people. Or as I like to say, $1 trillion coach from Silicon Valley, Bill Campbell, has an amazing line that I love, which is your title makes you a manager. Your people will decide if you are a leader. And so that kind of boils it down that, Katie, I initially was an inspiring leader because I didn't even know there was a game to be played. Then I got obsessed with climbing the ladder. I sold out to get promoted and hit results. And then because of that performance review, I permanently rededicated myself to me as a leader on my best day. And I'm just so happy that I was vulnerable and honest and courageous enough to say, Paul, your core value is authenticity. Don't you ever sell out again for anybody's interest if they take you away from who you are on your best day. And that was all because my core value of authenticity drove that change.
Yeah, that's great. You went back to your own five pillars, which you needed to lead yourself so that you could lead others,
Yep.
and now lead for the future as well. So
yep.
That's fab. My next question is, what is something unexpected that you learned through the process of writing your book?
Yeah. So unexpected is here. I had a positive unexpected, and then I won't say a negative, but kind of an eye-opening / scary one. The positive is I thought it was going to be a lot harder to write a book. Now, part of this was the cocoon that I mentioned. I think going into writing zone for, kind of on a religious basis for 3 months straight, a lot easier, in my opinion, to write a manuscript that way. So I'll let you know for book number 2 when I'm hopping on planes every week, and I'll say, yeah, writing is really hard. Maybe I go to Cabo for a month and crank out another book. Who knows? But that'll be fun over an adult beverage. But that was probably what was the easier side for me. The harder side is the mental challenge of, so on your best day, every single word you write or type, you have a feeling like you're about to change the world. Yeah. Like, oh my gosh, it's going to impact so many lives. Versus on the worst day, you're like, who's going to care? Yeah. This sucks. Why am I even wasting my time? So that mental roller coaster, that, just pendulum of highs and lows, that was just mind, what. I can't say the second word on this podcast, but it just blew my mind that I'm extremely confident. I'm very bullish on my abilities, but there were days that I was questioning who's even going to care. Right. And and as I share this with other authors, like, oh yeah, dude, that's 100% what happens. But I didn't know because this was my first book.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a roller coaster, and it's so exciting when it finally is out and you don't have to be working in the book anymore.
And now the proof's in the pudding. Yes.
Yeah, you just talk about the book. Well, as a little side note before we move to the last question, one of the helpful tips that some other authors who came before me said too is like, you could keep editing it into, forever. And there's always going to be things that you might wish to change, and your thinking is always going to evolve. And you just have to accept that your book is an imperfect place in time. You put a pause, you put something out there, and then it's okay. And your thinking can evolve, and there can be mistakes or things you want to change, and yet get it out there. And that's what the most important thing is. So
it's a great insight.
Yeah. It was like, allowed me to free up a little bit to my own.
Oh yeah. It can be paralyzing when they ask you to submit your final edits. I'll admit that.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so we have a last question, and this is my favorite one to ask all the authors who come on to my show, is that what is a question that you haven't been asked about the book, either by me or someone else? So basically, haven't been asked yet, and that you'd like to address. What is the question, and what is your response?
Wow.
I know.
Yeah, that's really tough to answer, but I will give it an A for effort here. So a question that I have not been asked. So a lot of people, the most common question is, what was your inspiration to write the book? And again, I think that it often comes from the positive side of why you write a book, but I also understand that there has to be some pain or a challenge that you want to overcome, or a problem that you're determined to solve. Otherwise, why write the book? Because then it's not going to help others. And in my case, it was really a matter, I already shared kind of what my leadership journey was, but I think my inspiration and also my pain was the more that I get to talk about purpose, and I also tackle a lot of questions about legacy. I started to ask myself, how do I want to be remembered? And I wasn't always pleased. If my journey were to end today, would I say it was a full life? Would I say that I'm fulfilled? Would I say that I left it all out there on the table? And also, would I have any regrets? And that's probably the thing I hear the most, is people don't regret what they do. They regret what they don't do. And as I talk to folks that are saying at my retirement party or at my celebration of life, and so that's kind of, nobody's asked me that, but like the real inspiration here and the real motivation was, I didn't want to have a regret of not serving my late father, who is so proud of me taking this leap of faith and the courage that it took to push forward, especially during a pandemic, to write this book. And I'll share this with you, Katie, and this is just kind of a beautiful ending. The opening dedication of the book, because as I was writing it, my wife and I, we were pregnant. And so, I wrote it to our future leader, PJ, which that's my son's name, now 3.5 months old at the time we're having this convo. And I still remember, and tears come to my eyes every time that I open this page, say, to my future leader, PJ, may you live and lead with happiness, purpose, and a spirit of playing offense. This one's for you. And I cannot wait for him to read those words and know what they mean. And I just want him to be happy. So nobody's asked me what playing offense is without all the buzzwords and the business words. I just want the world to be a happier place.
Yeah. Well, I love that, Paul. Thank you. With a little heart. Oh, it's been so great to dive back into, just talking with you and then learning more about your book and your message. And I'm really thrilled for what we're about to offer as well. So in the spirit of author interviews, we're going to do some book giveaways, which is super exciting. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So in the information below, you can enter to win a copy of both Paul's book and my book as well. So that is super exciting. And really, both of these books are about inspiring you to look at yourself and start with yourself so that you can lead others and make a positive impact on the world and create a world of caring and happiness. And I'm excited to dive deeper into your book, Paul, and for the day that we can get together in person again and do some collaborative events and get our high extroverted energy together in the same place. I also, before we got started, you showed me the Daruma doll that I gave you.
Oh yeah, this little guy. Yeah, thank you. This was a gift from Katie Anderson circa a couple years ago. Yes.
Yeah, so good. And I'm excited to hear when you do get to complete your goal and to share that, share the visual with me. So
yes, you will be the first to know.
Yes. And Paul, how can people get in touch with you and learn about the book as well?
Sure. So my website is paulepsteinspeaks.com, the book powerofplayingoffense.com. And really that has all the resources. So it's all about action. Yes, to inspiration, but more importantly, there's 50 plus ways that you can implement activities and exercises in your business and life on Monday morning. That's the mission of the book. So that's the best way. And then across all social platforms, most active on LinkedIn, Instagram, not hard to find. So please just find Paul Epstein or at Paul Epstein Speaks. And I'd love to connect and engage further.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much, Paul. And I'll talk to you soon. Good luck, everyone. Enter that in giveaway too.
Yes.
Okay.